Good afternoon. Nice for you to join me on vacation. It's going to be a spectacular sunset, I'm sure. It's coming from Shvat, the Rebbetzins yahrtzait. If the Rebbe was 11 or is 11, the Rebbetzin is 22. Something spectacular, something the Keflaim L'Tashiyah. Double strength, double measure, double significance. So everything to the Rebbe is what the Rebbetzin represents, which is the ability to bring Mashiach in as a reward for the entire Jewish people and for the entire world. So that is supposed to be as a reward and merit of the Jewish women. This class is dedicated to the women in our communities that are supposed to be at the forefront of transforming this world into a paradise in their merit. So I have a shir outlined. I put a lot of links. I want to go through them. I end up just giving a drush, and I don't think that that's the best idea. I think we should learn text inside together. So I stringed a whole bunch of sources that appear in the Rebbe's Dvar Malchus, which speaks about the yahrtzait of welcome. Kim Merker, good to see you. Keep it in the family. So we should have tons of Merkers on this class. Why not? God multiplied the world with Merkers, so they might as well learn about the importance of Shvat. Yesterday we celebrated the Rebbetzins yahrtzait, and the Rebbetzins name becomes the topic of learning from by the Rebbe on the Rebbetzins yahrtzait, saying that Chaya, yes, I'm early. I tried to make a lot of announcements. I'm an hour early this week because it's my dear and love of my life, Kareen, who it's her birthday tonight. Yesterday was the yahrtzeit of the Rebbetzin. Tonight we're going into an equally important day where we celebrate truly the brightest neshama I've ever met in my life. I never met the Rebbetzin, so the competition of it wasn't a factor. Kareen is my Rebbetzin. There's no one more wise I've ever met. So, the Rebbetzins name, Chaya Mushka, there's like 1 in every 7 girls in Chabad is named Chaya Mushka. Happy birthday, Corinne, thank you. Kim, I'll extend the love and the good wishes. So, the Rebbe wants the girls in Chabad and all the Jewish women around the world to see what kind of example exactly is the Rebbetzin. What makes the Rebbetzin distinguished as the model woman to guide all the Jewish people? You could see clearly in her name, Chaya Mushka, someone who has a life passion about Jews, supporting Jews around the world in a way that is relevant to them. So when we talk about Chaya Mushka, we're talking about, when we say Chaya, we mean the life that you are aware of. Mushka, on the other hand, is a name of a fragrance. It's like Chanel 5 or something like that. The Rebbetzins acronym for a name is 5, incidentally, so that fit in nicely. The 5 is Chaya Mushka Schneerson is Chamesh, 5. So the Rebbe gave people $5. I can't read lips, so I can't quite hear you. The waves, it sounds like the waves, but we're not quite near the beach, are we? The teras is made out of mushka. The tera, I believe it's the Aramaic translation, mushka. And the idea of having inspiration that's not what you're aware of. Things that affect us that are not part of this world. That's the number 11. You have 10. You have the 10 commandments. You have the 10 utterances with the world which was created with. 10 is logic and order. The number of spheres are 10. The number of spheres in the other side is 11. So the transformation of the other side equally has a holy counterpart, and there's 11 ingredients in the teres, the incense. So one of those is called Mer, Mem Vav Resh. You should know more about more, or myrrh in English, which is translated as Mushka. So there's a fragrance that does also revive when someone's, saw Elvis. When a woman saw Elvis, she might faint, literally, if you see the footage. And then you probably give her sniffing salts, because the scent speaks to the soul. You want to bring the soul back into the body? Give it smelling salts, give it fragrance, and it revives. But that reviving is not one like you didn't like put Twinkies into his mouth to invigorate him, or coffee, like put it like a straw of coffee in the person that needs reviving in their mouth, and they will consume. So different than food is a fragrance that you don't imbibe, you are in the presence of. You don't have a relationship where you have a coffee and bam, you're onto things. You are affected by things that you're unaware of the cause. A fragrance, you might have a subtle fragrance in the room, and the room becomes a dira na'eh, a beautiful environment. One of the 3 things we'll learn, if we get that far in this class, that expand the mind, marchivim daiti shel adam, they broaden the mind. We'll see different interpretations of what that means. But one of the 3, and the first of the 3, is a dira na'eh, a pleasant home. Remember, we're supposed to be, as Jews, making a home for Hashem, where Hashem, as it were, can be himself. Where a person feels that their soul can expand into an environment. So if you want an environment to be expansive, it has to be beautiful. And beauty becomes the central focus and the stimulus of the higher faculties is associated with fragrance. When we speak about the pleasure Hashem has from our efforts towards him, it's called a reach nicheach, a fragrance that's pleasant. Fragrance, and specifically here in this context, we're talking about the Rebbetzins name, Chaya Mushka. When we talk about the life, that effect that we're aware of, the part of us that we're aware of, that's indicated by the word Chaya. And Mushka, the fragrance, is talking about the higher faculties of the person, which transcend the person and don't permeate his body in a way that it's like X-rays pass through the person, as opposed to like leaving a shadow. It's something that's higher, it's transcendent. So a fragrance represents the aspect of yachida of the soul, the singularity of the soul, the part of the soul that has only an awareness of Hashem, infinity in everything. So the yachida shebenefesh is indicated by the name Mushka. Put them together in a package, Chaya Mushka tells you that you have to have this marriage of reason, the number 10, and the beyond, the incense is number 11. It's the transformation of the 11 crowns of Klippa, of the Sitra Achra. They're called crowns, and not spheres there. They are number 11, because they recognize Hashem as the God of God, King of Kings, but they mistakenly think that they have their own independent divinity. the angels themselves, or the spheres that sort of that is the source of their origin. And the reason why they count 11, so there's 10 different faculties of a person, but the 11th is the recognizing of the vitality of that as a separate thing. So there's God, he has a system, we're that system, God invigorates that system, and therefore you could count that as a separate thing. In the side of holiness, on the other hand, you recognize that when we're going to talk about the level of crown of Keser, it's when you speak about that in the context of creation, which is 10 sayings that the world was created in, that becomes part of the picture and hidden in the picture. So there's a very secretive aspect of mysticism that is reached through talking about the yechida of the nefesh, the highest aspect of the soul. You're meant to have them both together, so there's no difference between the highest level 11 and the regular order 10. It's supposed to be Chaya Mushka together. Okay? So that's my sort of synopsis or introduction to the Rebbe's Sikha, which I think we're going to get to afterwards. I want to go through the sources with you. I said a bit of the main parts of the Sikha where it's going to be brought in sources. I want to learn the sources with you because this is really sort of an official class. And I used to give a lot of just like drushes, not really drushes, but teachings off by heart. Well, not off by heart either, but just like off the cuff. And I didn't necessarily take the time to learn all the sources. Since this is an official class and it's at night, I thought that it would probably be advised to do so. Please click the links. First, I'm going to bring here in the sheet. It's going to be it's a women's beauty sheet in Safari.org, which is the best website. They started to have Chabad topics there. I'm just going to post it again on the Facebook stream because some of you know about that through there. And you'll see on this day, if you're watching this later, you'll be able to reference again that sheet. So there, I just posted it. And the first topic is to show you, we spoke a bit about in the introduction, about a dira noah, one of the three things that expand your mind. Is a pleasant environment to live in. So God asked that of us. This is the source for it. I'm going to go pretty quick because it's just sort of like the preliminary step of this. This is actually a famous medrash that's quoted a lot when we learned Basi Lagani, which was with Shvat a few weeks ago. It quotes this medrash, how God's presence is something that is revealed on a spectrum. Originally, the whole spectrum shone brilliantly, and then there was a diminishment of the God's presence in the world. It went away from the Garden of Eden and went up into the highest heaven, and then came back with Abraham and Moshe, ultimately bringing it down all the way. When Moshe created a Mishkan, a dwelling place, a sanctuary for God, and it sort of was represented in the Ten Commandments of sapphire stones in the ark, that was considered a return to the garden. And that is described here in the Medrash as the desire of Hashem to make a dwelling place in the lowest realm. So he gave a foretaste, like here it is, Adam and Eve are happily living in this garden, and it was destined to be something that we were cast out of, and then ultimately to return to. So the words in the Medrash Tanchuma, it says when Moshe completed the gathering of all the things he needed to build the Mishkan, Rabbi Meir, one of the Amoraim of the Gemara says, every place where it says Vayihi, and it's a new thing that's taking place. So it was a new thing that Moshe was facing in terms of the creation of this sanctuary in the desert. So that's one opinion. Rav says it means a new thing is happening whenever you have the word Vayihi, the introductory word of that. But Rabbi Shimon argues, Kol makom shemer Vayihi, whenever it says Vayihi, and it was Davar Shayad Nifsak Lahar Beyamim, it was something that was stalled for a few days, for many days rather, and it went back to its former state. So here, the word Vayihi, according to Rav Shimon, is a return. That's why it says in the verse in Shir Hashirim, it says, I've returned to my garden, my sister, my bride. It's actually, I've come to my garden, but here it's clearly meaning to return. Amar Rabbi Shmuel Bar Nachman, at the time where Hashem created the world, He desired for there to be a dwelling place in the lowest realm, to reflect the things that go on in the higher realm. So it's meant to be this complete, transparent, and synchronous divine expression. The physical lowest world, the world that we sort of live in the most, is meant to be, that is the place of God's desire to dwell in a way that reflects the higher realm. Okay, so it just describes then how the sort of transgressions that followed being cast out of Eden pushed the divine presence further and further away, and it was brought back, and we had the Mishkan. Okay, so that's the Medrash Tanchuma. Next item in the source. I'm just trying to, these are sort of in chronological order of the sources quoted in the Sifa, parts of which I hope we have time to read at the end of this. They're just so important to understand the urgency. I have, though, probably the main thrust of this class will be a teaching of the Chassidus Nachabad. That's really, it should be at the end, so I hope I remember to do that, because here it's in the middle. I'm going to try and insert that in the end, because it gives an answer to what I think is a very big question, is that when we say that a good environment expands the mind, it opens the mind, it's actually the sort of plain meaning of that is in relation to Bilam, the wicked prophet, who said that he had tremendous greed for King Balak's wealth, and he desired it. So the idea of an expanded mind in this sense is more like when Scarface, Lahavdil, gets his palace set up, what's he going to do there? When Dick Cheney sits at his office desk, and the first one is like a little closet that he gets, and then he moves up. I'm sure he was in the Oval Office basically after that. The idea of office and an environment that's created by a dwelling place, by a dira, by a home, is one associated with the opportunity to pursue delight. So you have a nice home, what are you going to do in it? This will be reflected in a fascinating parallel with the people of Sodom, of Sdom, that were actually an incarnation in the door of the generation in the desert, the Exodus from Egypt, which is now the present generation. So these Sodomites, and what's brought out about being from Sdom here, is the idea of not having barriers, fences, and how ultimately that's meant to be corrected. So they had to be reincarnated in the descendants of Abraham, who prayed for them. That was their correction, that they were able to be descendants of Abraham, and they are ultimately, that means we, the Jewish people, are ultimately destined to succeed in that very difficult mission of conquering the attraction to misuse of the lowest world, the physical world. Okay, Gemara Brachas. It says it's 57b if you're following like with an art scroll Talmud. Shleisha meshivim daite shaladim. There are three things that cause the mind of a person to return. Remember, we were talking about marchivim daite shaladim, to expand the mind. That's the second part of this phrase. It starts with the idea of what causes the mind to be at ease. And it cites them, the voice, sight, and smell. Three things, they cause the mind to be settled when they are pleasant and aesthetic, is added here to explain it. Three matters give a person comfort. So there's Shleisha marchavim daite shel adam. Three expand the mind. Here they translate it, instead of expand the mind, they give a person comfort. How you translate it, firstly, it has to be authentic and aligned to the actual Hebrew word, and then it has to be relevant in the way we're going to apply it in the teaching. So that sometimes words have different connotations, and therefore the translation can be completely missing the point unless it's brought into your context. So we hope we get the right word for that. Three things literally expand the mind of a person. They are a beautiful home, a beautiful wife, and beautiful furniture or vessels. Kelim noim, beauty. Remember, the reason why we're talking about this Mishnah is because it's quoted, and hopefully we'll get to that, as a source when the Rebbe is telling you here the importance of what a woman contributes to the world, which is beauty. So she's in the middle of these three, the woman. There is a pleasant home, a pleasant wife, and pleasant furniture. So the idea is you want to create a pleasant home, the wife is there to be the one to represent the importance of having beauty in all the things in the home. Okay? So that's, I think, the Seder Hishtalshlus, the order there. Rashi interprets the first part of this Gemara. It says, three things settled, ease the mind of a person. First part of this. Rashi says, what do you mean voice? Shalmine zemer, from instruments. Oy kel arav shal isha, or the beautiful, sweet voice of a woman. That's Rashi's interpretation on that. So that relates to the second part, where Isha is listed as one of the three things that expand the mind. Now this is the Maharsha, Chidushi Agadas, Shleisha Mashivim Daitev, Shleisha Marchivim. Rebbetzin Leimar, there's three things that settle the mind and three things that expand the mind. Rebbetzin Leimar, meaning Mashivim Daitev Imhu Dayag Ubayagain. If a person is worried or in grief, there's three things that soothe him. Mashivim Masirin Ha'anacha. It settles the person and removes the grief, the groaning, mimenu, from him or her. Umarchivin chulu. And the three things that expand the mind, hainu, meaning, what does it mean expand the mind? So the Marshal says, Sheyiyah daite v'nafshe rachava, that his focus, his das, and his soul, his consciousness, should pursue tainuge olam hazeh, the pleasures of this world. Bebilim v'nafshe rachava. As it's written with regard to the evil prophet Bilam, that his soul was expansive. So here you see there's a negative connotation here. The negative connotation is when you have a nice home, a beautiful wife, and nice things, it makes a person very attached to the physical aspect of that. So there are three different levels of how your environment and your interpersonal relationships are, and the resources, the kelim. If they have beauty, they bring out a fascination with the superficial. So it has a negative connotation. We're going to see an answer from the Beis Yaakov. I hope I remember to bring it at the end. I'm going to skip it here. It's in the source sheet. It's going to be the next one. But I want to come back to it later because I want the mystery to be appreciated. So here we see the three things that expand the mind, mean they make the mind available. They make the conditions required for a person to be settled enough to pursue physical delight, and that is seen as something associated with the dark prophet Bilam, something bad. Okay, remember source number 5 we want to come back to. It's very long, it's very important, so I hope we have time to do it. Okay, this is also important. The Mishnah Torah, it's in English. I'm going to read you the English to do it faster. It's the Rambam. This is a source that I was looking for a long time. I said in the shul in Edinburgh, where there's amazing shul, I love it, Rabbi Levi Zaltzman, great rabbi, lots of spirit and lots of sensitivity, great shul. The place needed a little bit of more feminine touch. I'm not the one to do it, but I'm the one to sort of speak on their behalf, since they're not really officially given a voice still in Orthodox communities. I find that personally offensive because I love women, I love my mother, I love my wife. I mean, I love my daughter. Don't forget that. So I think women are very important, and since we are going to learn the source today that says that they are responsible for bringing the ultimate reward for all of humanity, it's very important that their voice is heard, and what women are unique in contributing is respected. Thank you. So I managed to get on the team there to improve it. And the way I argued according to Torah, because someone was dismissive of this idea, saying it's just a shtibel. Why do you have to make it look beautiful? It's a place where we could not look at the superficial things, focus on the camaraderie that it builds in a shul, and what you could do there. You could pray and you could daven and you could learn Torah. So why is it so important to make it beautiful? It's the women barely come. They're only there on Shabbos for a couple hours. And the rest of the week is our domain. We don't have to make it look beautiful. This is what the Rambam writes. I was looking for the source. Here it is, quoted by the Rebbe, so I looked it up, and here's the source. Since all of these categories of oil are acceptable, it's in the context of things forbidden for the altar, for the Mizbeach, and therefore the counterpart is, or one of the things that you're forbidden is to bring is something that is a standard and not superior. So when it comes to oil that was used for these sort of baked offerings, like they had, like literally they would have pancakes in the Holy Temple, the Kohanim would eat them, and you have to put oil in them as one of the ingredients that are required. Why were they listed as separate categories, Rambam asks? So that one would know the superior category that nothing surpasses. We're told that when you crush a grape, you have the first drop, the virgin oil is the best. Use that for the menorah. The second drop can be used, I think, for the menafes, the meal offerings, these pancakes. And then from then on, you use it for, I think, like other uses in the Holy Temple. Like, I don't want to give an example, I might be off. So that's the context, and then he uses that to learn a general principle about all of our religious attention to detail. Here you list the different levels of preference in oil, the quality of the oil. In this way, one who desires to gain merit for himself subjugates his evil inclination and amplify his generosity, should bring his sacrifice to the most desirable and superior types of the items he is bringing, the Rambam writes. For it is written in Torah in Genesis 4:4, and Abel, Hevel, brought from his chosen flocks and from the superior ones, and God turned to Hevel, which is Abel in English for some reason, and his offering. So God turned to it. There was preference because he offered his choice flocks. So God, as it were, prefers to show his satisfaction and appreciation, and he laps it up with the fiery lion. So that miracle showed these sort of archetypal people that walk the earth. Through miracles, they were able to see that there was an inherent karmic system that when you give your best, you are reciprocated from on high. It's meant to be a dynamic that is not one that ignores the other, but that you become one by listening and communicating. The same applies to everything, Rambam continues, given for the sake of the Almighty who is good. It should be the most attractive and highest quality, and this is the point that I brought here to show that Edinburgh has to be the finest. If one builds a house of prayer, it should be more attractive than his own dwelling. Now, if you've come over, Baruch Hashem, I'm living in a house that's very, it's a party central, let's just face it. The shul has to be better than that. So this is an obligation that I'm really trying to garnish steam and make it happen in Edinburgh and in every shul. It needs a feminine touch. People, when I said, I meant to say before, that the feminine touch is like, why are you bringing feminism into this? And I just think it's important because it's sort of part of the package that you don't want to exclude such an important part of the picture. Okay, but that's all self-understood. If he feeds a hungry person, Rambam continues, he should feed him from the best and most tasty foods of this table. If he clothes one who is naked, he should clothe him with his attractive garments. If he consecrates something, he should consecrate the best of his possessions. All the superior qualities should be given to God. Kol chaylev la Hashem. All the fat goes to Hashem. Blessed be God who offers assistance. Rambam concludes with, in those laws of things prohibited to the altar. So, the story of Cain and Abel, Havel was a shepherd. He brought the best of his flocks, and Cain was a farmer. He brought some random, whatever was at hand. He said, I better recognize Hashem, and just took what was ever there, and he was ignored because of that, or he didn't get the response. In the Holy Temple, we said there was a lion, a fire, that comes down, swoops down, or just it's actually wandering about the altar, or whatever, an angel. It's a representation of God's glory in the world in the form of a fiery lion. If a person's sacrifice, however, was not desirable to Hashem, it would be in the form of a fiery dog. Did you know that? Isn't that interesting? So it's like an offensive type of, like, the last person that gets to feed at the banquet of the king. So the king and his ministers eat, then the lower level ministers, then the staff, and whatever they throw out goes into the alley and the dogs get it, as Hasidus explains. Here, that sort of, it must be, and kings would have like leopards tied to their throne. King Shlomo Melech had these mechanical lions. So it could be, therefore, the association of the king's pet, so to speak, is in close proximity to the actual throne. Next source is Tainis Lamed Aleph in the Gemara, first page. It says, the Mishnah also stated that the daughters of the Jewish people would go out and dance in the vineyards. It's talking about 2 days. The 15th of the month of Av in the summer, which is a very, very happy day, but a little bit not everyone's aware of what it means. But here it's going to be discussing the way the women who were single would go out into the fields and draw attention to potential suitors with different phrases, drawing attention to different things. The first one is beauty, the second is pedigree, and the third is fear of heaven. And how you deal with that, and how they have to have sensitivity to one who is not beautiful, and how do you bring out the natural beauty that is inherent to every person. And okay, that's probably a source I don't know if I'm going to get to. I've taught many times. I have also maybe it's sourced somewhere. It's Lakute Torah Shir Shirim, how you praise the Kala when you dance before the bride, what do you praise her with? What if she's, Beis Shammai asks, if she's lame or blind, do you call her beautiful? And Beis Hillel says yes, because by praising her in that way, it shines upon her and brings out the beauty, and therefore the transformation is something that is conferred in a way, or inspired to bring out like a natural beauty. I won't probably have time to do that source, but I've spoken about it like literally about 5-6 times here on this thing. You should know it for sure. Some of my more consistent listeners will know what I'm talking about. But it's important to understand. I think it's deserving of an entire share unto itself. It's probably the way. Maybe next week that will be an entire share unto itself. It's about how you bring out beauty where otherwise it's lacking or seems to be lacking. And there, just in its brief, is the idea of praising and bringing out, drawing down godly energy to make that revealed. That spiritual truth should be revealed in the physical world. Okay, I have a perfect source for that. Maybe just why I'm on this stream, I should just see if I can find what the Rebbe's words are about that. We're going to learn actually, hopefully, the Gemara that speaks about what Rabbi Yishmael did to beautify women who needed help with their marriage or to find a shidduch. He was in like cahoots with like an orthodontist or something like that, because he helped brides with their teeth to make them more beautiful. And it speaks about how you have the opportunity to adorn a bride in beautiful clothing to enhance beauty. Okay, so that's just a little bit of a preview. Here. Okay, this is like sort of the finale of the Rebbe's talk on it, but it's worth hearing again and again. I hope this sounds okay, because there's like a conga going off in the background somewhere in the distance. The sky does look nice now at this time. I don't have to like move to the side so it wouldn't look like a white. It could have been snow at that shot, at that level of illumination on the screen. So it says, I'm quoting page 356. I posted it on my class WhatsApp group. It's page 356. This, which is the middle of, I don't know. Well, it's the middle of the 14th. Oh, it's the beginning of the 14th, rather. So he says, we see when we're talking about a home in the literal sense, that the main beauty of the dwelling and the furniture there, the things in it, both spiritually and physically rather, and spiritually, both of them, is dependent upon the woman. The Rebbe says a keres bais, who's the mainstay or the root of the house, of the home. The kiyidu as their inyan fun na'eh, as is known that the concept of beauty, when they're keach to eiftan na'eh, and the ability to make beauty, is da b'myuchad by an isha, is mostly applied to a woman. Isha na'eh, as it says in the Gemara that we quoted, that the three things that expand the mind is the second one is a beautiful wife, kol na'eh v'chasuda, which is the praise that you say of the bride, that she's beautiful and gracious, irrespective of, even if she is obviously needing more help in that area. Biz, to the extent that, as Eina Isha Elel Yefi, that in this Gemara that we're learning now, this Gemara in Tainus that says there was groups of women that would go out into the vineyards and dance. The first group would say, a woman is only for beauty. And they would tell the young men to therefore look towards beauty, and they would try to vie for position that way. Yefi Baruchnius, and this is what the Rebbe adds to that the beauty is talking about a spiritual beauty, was der fun vert nicht also, from which pans out into the physical world in Yaifi B'Gashmias, in physical beauty. And he quotes a source, Yohel Er, and Biur Hazayr of the Tzemach Tzedek. So that, I tried to find that. I haven't been able to find that online or in the library yet. I think that would be very important to learn inside the text. Okay, so we're continuing. We're at source 8 on the link that I just put on my profile on Facebook. It says that the Gemara 31a, it's continuing with what we said before, that the Mishnah said that the Jewish women would go out into the vineyards and dance, and one who did not have a wife would turn to find one. They would go out to the vineyards. Okay, that was an appropriate place, I suppose, because l'chaim would probably fit in perfectly. So it is taught that those women of distinguished lineage among them would say, I made a mistake before, just to correct. The first to be mentioned is the yahrtzait, the ones who had a good pedigree. I misunderstood that. The sages taught this practice in greater detail in the Brisa. Oh, that's why I made the mistake, because it's expanding on this, and the Brisa does have it in that order. What would the beautiful women among them say? So you have all these women going out in Jerusalem and looking for shidduchim. They wanted the best suitors for them. So they would say things like, they would sing them while dancing. They would say, set your eyes towards beauty, as a wife is only for her beauty. They would say they have beauty, and they were flaunting it, saying that, in the context of what the Rebbe said, that it's spiritual beauty that comes out in the physical. If someone is beautiful and ugly inside, it's because they went off the path at some point. Think about it. To continue, this Gemara, what would those of distinguished lineage among them say? It's the second ground in the Brisa, specifies the second group. Set your eyes towards family, as a wife is only for children. And the children of a wife from a distinguished family will inherit her lineage. It's explained. What would the ugly ones among them say? Yes, it's seemingly an insensitive term. Sometimes it's used to draw divine compassion. There's stories of that, of a sage going up to a guy and saying, you're the ugliest guy I've ever seen in my life. And it was meant to crush him, to bring out a spiritual beauty in him and reflect his creator. I've spoken about that probably twice. What would the ugly ones among them say? Acquire your purchase for the sake of heaven, provided that you adorn us with gold and jewelry after our marriage to beautify us. So it's a promise of they probably look beautiful at the chuppah, and afterwards also to continue to beautify them. Everyone thinks the bride is beautiful. Why can't she stay in that state? Whoever's alarm is going off, can you please? Thank you so much. It's pretty loud. So. Sorry to intrude. No, it wasn't the people on the balcony next door. Even better. So, those who had no good qualities, they would say, acquire your purchase for the sake of heaven. In other words, look for those who are Yireh Shamayim, that are going to focus on what's really important. And in terms of beauty, don't worry, you can buy us Gucci and we're good. Rashi, on this Gemara, Shein Isha L'Banim. What does it mean that a woman is only for children? Im banacha yuma yuchasin hakol mekaytz bin aleim bein zkarim bein akevis. If their children are of good pedigree, everyone's going to want to marry them, and therefore you're going to bring someone who enjoys being alive more than the other guy. Next Rashi, Amnas titruhu bezovim, in order that they should be adorned with gold. Sha'achre nisuin, after the wedding, after the marriage, Rashi specifies. Titnu lanu, he interpolates the words that these women are saying, that if they're not beautiful now, give us beautiful clothing or and jewelry. It's talking about just the natural way of things. The Amrei Kalaimar. As if to say, just give us good clothes and everyone will be happy. Tainus, the Gemara. I just wanted to continue the Gemara there because it goes on to say something about the future redemption, so it's very related. Amar Ula B'Yiro. I'm going to read the English since it's here. The tractate concludes with a statement related to the topic of dancing. Ula, the city of Bir'ah, said that Rabbi Elazar said, in the future time, in the time of the redemption, in the end of days, the Holy One, blessed be He, will arrange a dance for the righteous, and He will sit among them in the Garden of Eden, and each and every one of the righteous will point to Hashem with his finger, as it is stated, and it shall be on that day, behold, this is our God, for whom we waited, that He might save us. It's from Isaiah. God will be revealed so that every righteous individual will be able to say, this is our God, as though they were pointing at Him with a finger. Okay, then it quotes that part about the bride. I think that part's worth a whole class into itself. I've given it before, I might give it again. The source is there, I'm skipping it. And I'm going to go back to source number 5. Okay, because the rest of it is about that. I'm going to stay there for another class. And we're going to go back to source number 5. Everyone should be clicking in their iPads now because this is important. It's long and it's deep, very deep. I've been thinking about this for days, trying to make sure that I have this right, because it brings in Dveikus, and I take Dveikus very seriously. That is the currency of transformation, is Dveikus. So be very familiar with that feeling. So the Beis Yaakov on the Torah, the Yera Chaf Beis Pasuk Gimel 22:3 in the Yera. It says, it brings in about 3 ideas in a sandwich. It starts from the outside, brings another thing to explain it, makes a sort of core idea that reflects back and to shed light on it, and then brings it back to the beginning topic. And it goes about 3 or 4 generations it covers. So keep in mind that it is difficult and complicated, and you're all very smart. So just stick with me and have another coffee. Zeu she'emer sham b'medrash. So the Beis Yaakov is a Hasidic interpretation. He's quoting the Medrash. Hashem amar machasa. It's the talking about God wanting to notify His child, as it were, Abraham, what He's going to do to his distant relatives, the people that lived in Sodom and Sodom. I want to say Sodom, that's the proper way to say it. There's no reason to say it wrong. I just try and contextualize it for those tuning in. So God says, should I not confide that His plans was to wait them out? And Abraham does something incredible to their destiny, the migration of their souls into us today. Fascinatingly, you never knew you were related to them. And there is actually a positive, there's a flip side of Sodom, that is remarkable. And it's actually the purpose that we're here for is to transform the darkness that we'll see. It has to do with not respecting boundaries. So it's very topical for our times when everyone's phone is just there are no boundaries. You have to impose your own. And the way to do that is through Dveikus. It's through living with the Geulah, when there's going to be a time where Hashem will vanquish the spirit of impurity from the world. Find out how to do that through Dveikus. You'll see a great proof for that in what we're going to read. So here we've just quoted the Medrash. She says, I have to confide in my favorite righteous person that walks the earth, Avram Avinu, first person to recognize monotheism in any way through time, because idolatry was very prevalent. So, well, it was actually covered the entire world. It's like if Chas v'Shalom, the Second World War, turned out the wrong way, how our history books would look at that point. Chas v'Shalom. Zeh shamar kasu. So he quotes the verse in Job. It says, "Az yigala eizin nashim." Then I will reveal to the ear of men, Maseiram yahrtzait, and their rebuke I will see, or it might be the Masera, their tradition I will seal. So there was a tradition that was passed, or was about to be passed, from Jacob to his children. So we're skipping a bit from Avram to his grandson Yaakov, as you'll see. But first we give a psychological landscape for this conversation. A person has thought, will, and action. Will here actually means emotion, as we'll see. Okay, so you have thought, then you have a response to that thought and emotion, and then you have, does it pan out in an actual, like, I'm so angry I could throw this nunchuck at the guy. If you didn't do it, so you don't like to pay him for his lapel that got dirty from it, or whatever. You didn't do anything. It was an emotion, so it was wrong. It's dangerous. We make a fence. We put up boundaries and say, that emotion I recognize is negative, and I'm going to try and keep away from thoughts that bring me there. The thought itself is not so bad, because you, for example, to rule with regard to idolatry, you have to understand it. You have to know, if you're a rabbi, like of that authority, you have to know what's forbidden in order to advise people, like for Shalom, someone's involved with J for J or something like that. They have to be guided towards Judaism as its rightful counterpart, the right way to understand all these ideas. So the thought itself is not as harmful. It's more, it's precipitous, but it's not as inherently sullied. Whereas action, you'll see, tends towards, we have to put extra fences the further down this spectrum we go. So there's thought, emotion, and action. And thought, there's no prohibition, this author says. Okay? I think it means beyond what's already prohibited. You're not allowed to think things that will deny God's unity, for example, and take them on as your belief system. So there are thoughts that are forbidden. So he doesn't mean that. He means fences beyond the already forbidden thoughts. So why do you need bigger fences on the emotions and bigger ones on actions? According to this author, Beis Yaakov Altera, it says, thought can explore any prohibition in the world, since there is no, in the thought itself, at the level of thought, there's no desire inherent there. So it's not going to lead the person astray. In thought, you need no extra boundaries, because thought is like the written Torah, that are thoughts as they exist in our Creator, the author of the Torah. So that is a level of purity that doesn't require any changing, or like you don't worry about how people interpret it. You trust that the wisdom is inherent to the text, and anything that is different is extra by definition. There's a purity to the level of the written Torah. It's a bit outside the direct path here of this class. So there, in the level of thought, a person actually has to know all the things that are prohibited, else how are you supposed to stay away from them? You have to give your children, for example, some awareness of what they're going to face. So the rabbi or the teacher or the parent has to know about these things in order to be able to instruct about them. But the problem is that from thought, if it's prolonged or inappropriate in intent, from there could branch off foreign desires in the heart. So you could have a will for pulling what are those things called? Slot machines all night. And trust me that that's wrong. Don't do that. Okay? If you're having a good time, I don't know what to tell you, but don't make it like a life's ambition. Recognize where your emotions are taking you and determine whether that's where you want to be or not. As so the person, therefore, recognizing that in the realm of emotion, there is risks to sort of preoccupy ourselves with things that are inappropriate. So we have to make fences around those areas. We know what affects us, and therefore a person that's honest knows that I can't go like 15 feet away from the concert because I'm going to be drawn in. And I mean, that's relative to how black your hat is, I suppose. But and then in the third level, when it comes out to the realm of action, then you have to have a lot of precautions and distance from things that are going to bring out a negative result in terms of action. So if a person's too violent, if they're watching like video games of smashing everybody up every second, be careful about what that's doing to your mind. Be aware of the possible impact on your character and put up the appropriate guardings not to bring yourself to a place you don't want to be. And that should be attended to with reins of fear. So now we're bringing it back. We didn't explain Yaakov yet, but Avram's involvement with the people of Sodom, were Loi Gadu Atzam Shum Geder V'Siag, as Yaakov says here. They did not introduce any protections for, like, I guess those who really firmly believe in filters. This is a good source for saying you need to protect yourself from what's possible to actually happen. Children to stumble upon something that could lead them astray. Obviously, you'd want to get someone who could help you with that technological dilemma. And Abraham davened for these people to save them. Hashem should save them. And Hashem answered them with this verse from Job that we quoted before. I mean, Job got a pretty good job being one of the authors. I don't think he wrote the book of Job himself, but I think Moshe Rabbeinu wrote it, according to one opinion. But anyways, the verse is, and Maisram Yachtaim, their tradition is sealed. Hainu Mashata Reitzilaser, meaning what you want to seal off from them. So, listen. What you want to prohibit them and to keep them close to me, God's saying, that I shall save them, it's already too late, Hashem says about these people of Sodom. They didn't make boundaries around things that are going to, sully them to the extreme. Shikvar nechtam mehem yeshuasam. Already it's been sealed. Their salvation, libli lazram. That's not dependent on some kind of supernatural salvation. That's not going to happen. Hashem tells Avram. And that's why it's brought in the Medrash. Azigala eizin anashim. Then I will reveal to the ear of men, Zeh Yaakov. That's referring to Yaakov. So the grandson of Abraham is told the secret of the Kates, the end of exile, the end of darkness, the end of temptation, and the end of the concealment of the soul. That's all coming to an end. Yaakov knew what it would take to get there. It's usually thought of as in terms of time. Here, this author is interpreting to mean in terms of how much, authentic prayer required, called dvekas. Authentic prayer. When prayer works, means you feel. You're supposed to have das. You're supposed to be present, and you're supposed to connect, and therefore you're supposed to feel what you're connecting with. So that is the commodity as opposed to time. But how much like volume of dvekas is required? If you knew, you'd stay in the yeshiva extra hours until it's all met up. His children, we'll see Yaakov telling his children, if he revealed the secret, they would have been able, like if you knew how much money you're going to win that night in the casino, you know when to stop, right? He could have told them, you got to play, you have to be addicted to the slot machine for only 3 hours because that's how much is required before you're going to really transform the entire world. You'll see that that's the way I want you to understand this. I'm going to read you the Hebrew with those words. Okay, so Yaakov is revealed the secret of how much darkness, and he wanted to tell his children when their prayers have been answered and the entire world is lit. Nechtam menashalo yigala, but God sealed that. So we're bringing that pasuk from Eov and Job, where it says that it was sealed. That secret was sealed. Have'eimer meisram yahrtzait, as the verse says, it was sealed. V'zeu baruch shemenu ba'atzmei lo nechtam. But we know that Yaakov did not lose this from himself. He knew what was required. Rak hishabal legalized labanav. But something happened when he wanted to say it. It changed. The words that he said was different than he wanted to say. He wanted to tell you guys, put in the hours. This is what's required. Do it. When you don't give that specifics, then you say, you know what? I'll put it off for tomorrow. I'll do 15 push-ups today. I'll do another 15. Eventually I'll get 100. It's not enough. So that secret would have been everything. When we're left with the freedom of not knowing, you don't know what's required of you. It's very important. So what does he give him in its place? Words are put into his mouth different from what he intended. It happens if you're speaking off the cuff. You don't know what you're going to say. It's easier when you have a lot of sources. So he ended up saying, he was forced or compelled to say the opposite. What's the opposite? Kedi'isa. He made it obscure by saying, forget about reaching the goal. For thousands of years, the soul will journey through a path of fences, of darkness, of obscurity. So by not telling them, I guess it seems to be, I'm just reading into this sort of angle, that they didn't really know how much to do. You'll see that the words suggest that. And therefore, they might have not pushed themselves hard enough, perhaps. That's a guess. Mashal Abed, he gives an example of a servant. So Yaakov and his children, he's about to tell them the secret of the end of exile, and we're going to give a parable to explain this, of a servant or a slave is probably the better, you see, because that's with free. Shaminu HaMelech, so that the king trusted this servant or slave, kol mash biyadu, to whatever extent that he could, and in all his reach, he trusted this servant. Ba ha'avid lamus, so at the end of his life, the slave is dying. Kara lebanav la'seisam b'nei chayrim. He called to his children. It might be the king called to the children. That makes more sense. But not really, because Yaakov called his children. So if Yaakov's the servant here, he's calling his children. It's not clear. In Hebrew, you have to figure it out. Just gives you the pronoun he. He called to his children. Okay, so it's children, so it's the slave. L'seisam b'nei chayrim, to free them. V'leimar lahem heikam diktiki shalahen. And they have to know where their forms are that they fill out to the register for their freedom. They have to get a writ of freedom. So he's telling them where it is. You'll see that the servitude here represents their inability to be free, which means to have dveikus. So Yaakov served. He wanted to bequeath the accomplishments of what his service did. He wants to free his children. His children wouldn't have to face a world that is inherently tempestuous and tempting, but one is going to be at that point free of them. So he wants to, the servant of the king wants to free his children, representing the ability to not have to worry about these fences anymore. So Yaakov wanted to reveal to them how much dveikus they would have to free themselves. They're going to have dveikus to Hashem Yisbarach ad she'ein tzrichim lashum geder v'tziag, to the point, such an authentic davening, a prayer that's so transformative that they don't need any fences anymore, because they are inherently trustworthy, because they are authentic and genuine to the core. And they stripped away all the fodder, the suit rather, that covered that over. So when a person is in the process of perfecting themselves, they do need fences upon themselves. But here, if they needed X amount of dvekas to reach a point where that was no longer required, Yaakov was forced, as it were, not to tell them that secret. He told them something else. So his speech was sealed. He couldn't tell them how much dvekas was required to be free of any temptation forevermore. And he told them the opposite. What does that mean, the opposite? That they should glorify the king al yidei by that they should focus themselves and contain themselves, fence off, put up restrictions and boundaries to whatever extent possible with all their might. Okay? So this has been the story of the Jew throughout thousands of years of trying to preserve our religion through saying, I'm not going to be like Arab Haaretz. I may be living in Egypt, but I'm not going to walk like an Egyptian. You know, like, keep your identity intact and be true to yourself. So Hashem answered Abraham, that it's impossible to save the Sodomites as they are. So there had to be a delay before they reached that kind of transformation required. So we're going to see that those are the descendants of Abraham into the descendancy of Yaakov, who is Yisrael himself. So Abraham davens for Steinman. What did he accomplish? That they should they should reincarnate in Abraham's children, as it says in Shar Peskim of the Arizal, that the Sodomites were reincarnated in the generation of the desert, the Exodus from Egypt. And which, the reason why I trace us into it, because the Rebbe says, quoting the Arizal also, that generation is reincarnated in the final generation of exile. And this will correct, for in a good way, and take all that was driving them into dark places by not putting up fences when they needed them. Now it has the chance of being brought back into holiness. So the drives that drove them, and the hispashtos, the expansiveness that it engendered, and what they put out was bad. Wasn't good. But we now, being the reincarnation of those people, have the opportunity to take those very energies and include that within holiness by finding out how you're supposed to approach those ideas. It's all different conversations, what your kashrus and food and everything has to be, every area. Then these powers themselves, these drives, this passion itself will be filled with holiness. Because they will be taken through your prayers and your service of Hashem. Everything you do to devote yourself to Hashem takes all the energy that drives you, that makes you who you are, and devotes it to that. And that transforms it and corrects it. And allows the fences to become, thank you, irrelevant. It's not, if an adult who is able to buy a phone in any given moment has to put up a filter, it's a strange thing, because he can always buy another phone, or he can tell the guy to take it off. It's a bit missing the core issue. It's not missing the point. You do whatever you can to help you with whatever you need, but it does not address the core issue. Let's just say that much. You're supposed to daven and serve Hashem with that power. And this is a source for something I'm going to make this picture of that because I've been looking for this for a long time. And here is the blatant overt source that says that through those things you will realize the glory of heaven. And you will serve Hashem with those very powers that are great, beautiful, and extra powered. The Yetzer Oiz, with greater might. And this is what connects to the very difficult to understand commentary that we had before, that when it says that Bilam is, Rashi said, that Bilam is the model for Rechavas Hadas, the expansion of mind. Because when you're in a good home and you have a good wife and you have good furniture, what are you going to do with that? The tendency is to be driven towards beauty, but if it's superficial alone and not reflective of an inner purity, it's really rotten in the core, and you don't want to, partner up with that. And now he addresses this directly by saying that the things that expand your mind in this world are the good things of this world. Like in Scarface time, that is actually what was considered expansive of mind. Nowadays, you want like the Zen living live wall and a lot of pleasant straight a Zen environment is probably more fashionable now. Either way they could be used for good or bad, right? And what are they supposed to do? You're supposed to take that tendency, which would drive you towards physical things, and use it l'divrei Torah. It says here, as it says in the Gemara Brachos, the author quotes, Shleisha marchivim daita shel. There are three things that expand the mind of man. And to that extent, Avram's prayer was efficacious, and he was able to do through his prayer to transform the situation. That these very powers, the Sodomites, their power that drove them into their depraved world, will spin off into the generations and be implanted in Avram's children. That's what he took the spirit of Stem and put it in his children, because he had confidence that met with that challenge, they will be able to direct that towards something holy. The Yishafkul will be transformed into good. And that's what it means when it would say, all the Gentiles of the earth will praise you, will bless you, or will be blessed in you, is better translation. Meloshin America Esa Elon, like one who draws the root of the tree back into the earth to make it blossom again. So he's drawing this. You're going to get nourished by the same waters, but the waters in their core are pure and have another chance in the Kedusha, that the Jewish people, the power, the strength of the Jew in his spirit to be aware of what's driving the person and use that towards serving Hashem. It says in Tehillim, we're just finishing up. I'm going fast because this is just tying it up here. It's the verse in Psalms that says the rock, the cornerstone that was hated by the ones who were building it. They had to schlep another cement, package up to create this structure. That becomes the cornerstone. So it's the fundamental. The thing that's difficult is usually the most fundamental. But the power of the good things in the physical world, this world, Yispashtusam, and all that entails, while Jews are mingling amongst the Gentiles who might not understand the exact way to interact with those things, therefore they might sort of show us a different way, like the cheeseburger was a bad invention, not good. Hemaguni muasim. So there's the disgust of that a person should have, or try to sort of breed that into their thinking. And when Jews encounter the same inclinations as the Sodomites had, who were wicked and transgressing against God to the extreme, and when the full measure is reached, and vengeance is sort of brought out into nature, however happens, tsunamis or whatever, God forbid. However Hashem decides to, there was that one in Indonesia like 10 years ago or something that is just 100,000 people or something. Hard to fathom the destruction that. But here it's actually talking about slightly different. It's talking about when the correction has been finally done enough. We did enough work on all those things. Then you move on to 2.0. The Yirshi Yisrael Ela Kaikas Tiharu Isam, and the Jewish people will inherit the good in those powers that misled so many people and purify them, and bring them in to be included within holiness, and to serve Hashem with them. Then they are graced with the Chlilas. Does anyone speak Ivrit in the room? Chlilas. Yaifi. Chalil means complete beauty. V'nasem hem reish pina, and it becomes the cornerstone. Have a great day.